They're talking about impeaching Biden. How could we not impeach Biden if this does in fact reach him? I wonder what their defense will be. I mean, this is just going on too much, and the like I said, the documentation that I've seen, I can't comment on all of it, but what I can comment on is that it is bad, and it is getting worse, and it is showing illegal monies from Chinese communists flowing into this White House.
Wow, strong words of potential impeachment from House Oversight Committee member Congressman Tim Burchett with me on Friday on Mornings with Maria over on Fox Business on the potentially compromised position President Biden is in when dealing with communist China after the House Oversight Committee report on millions of dollars the Biden family has taken in from communist China. House Oversight Committee Chairman Congressman James Comer revealing that 6 more members of the Biden family may have benefited from the family's various business ventures around the world. The new information comes from examining the suspicious activity reports. Those reports sent by banks to the Treasury Department in transactions involving President Biden's family. Joining me right now to get to the bottom of it this Sunday morning with more in an exclusive interview is House Oversight Committee Chairman Congressman James Comer. Mr. Chairman, good to have you this morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
What can you tell us about your latest findings and the Biden family receiving money from adversaries?
Well, we went into Treasury after a long battle to have access to those Treasury reports, thinking that there was a certain number of suspicious activity reports, the number that had been previously reported, and we thought that there were 2 or 3 Biden family members that would be implicated in these bank violations. Nearly 3 weeks later, we walk out of Treasury having poured over thousands of pages of documents, and I can tell you that there were more suspicious activity reports than had been previously reported, and many more Biden family members that were involved in the influence peddling scheme. We now have 9 and counting Biden family members who are zinged by at least one bank for receiving suspicious wires from our adversaries around the world.
So, in other words, adversaries, and including China, sent money directly to Biden family members into their accounts?
There's the key, Maria. They sent money to these LLCs that the Biden family members created. Now, that's another aspect of this. We went in thinking there were around a dozen LLCs. Through our informants and through our research over the past year and through other investigative reporting, we thought there were around a dozen of these LLCs that were created by Biden family members to disguise or launder where the source of the revenue was coming from. But there are many more LLCs. There are many more Biden family members, many more LLCs, and many more countries that were involved. I'll say this, China was probably the most reputable country that the Biden family was dealing with. And the question remains, what were these family members doing to receive this money? Right. There's no rhyme or reason for some of these Biden family members to receive any type of payment from our adversaries around the world, much less the number that we've uncovered, and we're still digging through these bank violations.
That's unbelievable. I mean, it couldn't be that they just wanted to hang out in the vice president's office, right? What were they paying for? One source sends me this. One of the huge benefits the Chinese may well have paid for was then Vice President Biden presiding over the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, on May 7th, 2013, between our Public Company Accounting Oversight Board and the Chinese Regulatory Commission to waive federal auditing requirements for hundreds of Chinese companies listed on U.S. exchanges. Was that part of it? Thousands more traded in our markets, all in violation of U.S. federal securities laws.
There are 6 specific decisions that Joe Biden made, either as vice president or president, that are very concerning to us, that we believe could potentially lead back to payments that were made to these LLCs that were then laundered down to the Biden family members. So you have to look at the number of the LLCs and look at the transactions and look at the limited bank records that we have to realize the great lengths to which this family went to try to disguise the sender of the money and then deceive the IRS. So, when we hear about the Biden family lawyers are meeting with the DOJ to talk about a potential indictment of Hunter Biden, I want to be very clear, Maria. It would be impossible for the Department of Justice to just cherry pick Hunter Biden for an indictment and not do anything to the 8 other Biden family members, because they were essentially doing the same thing and receiving the same types of payments from our adversaries around the world that Hunter Biden was doing.
So they were trying to make it look like the numbers were lower because they were dispersing money to other family members. How many family members were involved?
Right. Well, right now we have 9, but I believe in the end that number will be at least 12. I mean, this was the Biden family influence peddling scheme. And you know, when people say, well, they were involved in ventures around the world, I haven't found a legitimate business on the Biden end, Maria. I found legitimate businesses that were paying the LLCs that were then turning around and laundering the money back to the Bidens. But I haven't found any legitimate business dealings on the Biden end. It looks like if there was a legitimate business dealing in any of these LLCs, it was influence peddling. And, you know, if you want to get technical and if you want to get to a legal term, that's called being a foreign agent. They weren't registered as a foreign agent, and I'm sure the ethics laws would prevent immediate family members of high-ranking government officials from being foreign agents. Either way, this is bad. There are more laws that appear to me that have been broken than just tax evasion, and there are a lot more Bidens involved than just the president's son and his brother.
Wow. So the lawyers for Hunter Biden meeting with the DOJ this upcoming week. Do you expect Hunter Biden to get indicted? Do you expect other family members to have a target on their back or not? Or will this DOJ just ignore it all?
Well, they're in a pickle here, especially now with the IRS whistleblower. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason why Hunter Biden shouldn't have been indicted years ago, even before the last presidential election. But one of the challenges that I've learned that the Department of Justice, if there are any legitimate, serious people left in the DOJ that are really trying to do the right thing, is what do you do with this many family members of the president? I mean, there's not going to be anybody left for a Christmas picture. If the DOJ did their job and went in there and indicted everyone that has any type of fingerprints involved in this influence peddling scheme. I mean, it's the entire family.
Congressman, can you name the 6 decisions that Biden made, whether as vice president or as president, that helped China so that we could better understand what he was doing for the money he was being paid?
Well, we're going to talk about that later. We hope to have a press conference very soon to update the American people. And if anyone in the mainstream media is going to really care about it, we have a lot of new information. Those 6 decisions are going to be involved in more investigations. I think some of them that the American people know about. Some of them have been out there for a long time. But there are some new ones that I think have just popped on our radar screen here lately. Again, there's no reason and there's no explanation for this family to receive this many suspicious wires from adversaries around the world if Joe Biden weren't directly involved in some type of decision making, because I am confident that these people who were wiring the Bidens were expecting to get a return on their investment. And there isn't a single one of those family members that had the ability to do anything to influence foreign policy other than the big guy, Joe Biden.
So is that the reason he's so soft on China? You know, the surveillance balloon was met with no response. The origins of COVID-19, no investigation. Is this the reason?
Nothing on COVID, nothing on TikTok, nothing on the spy balloon. China continues to steal our intellectual property. They continue to manipulate our currency. They're buying companies around the world that are a problem for us from a national security standpoint. And yet this president does nothing about China. It makes you wonder, Maria, whether or not he is in fact compromised because of the millions of dollars his family's already taken in from the Chinese Communist Party.
All right, we're going to continue to watch your investigation, sir. We so appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
House Oversight Committee Chairman, Congressman James Comer. Thank you, sir.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.